I'm just gonna go get the mail.
You want her?
I wasn't gonna leave her.
All right.
Are you here for supper?
No. No. No.
You said you came back.
I came back.
You do something from here.
Right. I'm doing it by telephone.
I didn't know anything about what you're talking about. The only thing I knew was about going to a running thing for Russell. Come on. Stand on your tail. What's that? What is that? Here, give it to me. It's just
I'm on the Zoo Drive once a week in the summer. I'm also on net foreman, but no insulation. Well, but to them, look, I've got to get insurance.
See what these on computer screen could.
Have a try.
All right, everybody. Hi. Welcome back. It is now 4:05, 4:06 on Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. And I'd like to bring the Kane County Committee of the Whole to order. Clerk, could you please call the roll? Oh, I'm sorry. I have new language. I keep second time I've done this. I have to read the language first. I would like to announce those who have properly requested to attend this meeting remotely, and that is Deb Allen, correct?
She's not quite online yet, but yes.
Gary Doherty and Myrna Molina and Cliff Surges. Are there any objections to admitting these board members for attending online? Yes,
I think you have to take roll call to make sure there's quorum in the room before you can ask to admit the people who are remote.
this is new language from the state's attorneys, and then we're about ready to do roll call after that.
Okay, I just know what's in the Open Meetings Act in the state of Illinois, and you have to establish quorum in the room before you can vote to let someone else come in. So if there's a difference, if there's a discrepancy, I think it's something we need to look into.
Okay, that'll be fine, but we're just going to continue on right now with what I've been given. If there is no, and then everyone will be called in, Ms. Juby. There is a motion and are there any objections? I don't see any objections to this. Oh, okay. As a reminder for those who are attending remotely, the public must be able to see your face at all times during this meeting per Kane County Ordinance 23-77. So Mr. Doherty, Mr. Surges, Ms. Molina, thank you. You're already online. And Mr. Doherty, I know that you'll be showing your face, and obviously then you'll be just so we know that you're there. Now, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Allen. Bates. Berman,
Berman here.
Doherty,
Doherty here.
Davist. Ford. Gums. Iqbal. Juby,
Over here.
Kenyon, I do see you online.
I'm online.
Caius,
Guys present.
Leonard, I also see you online.
Yes, I'm online.
Lewis,
Lewis here.
Linder,
Linda here.
Molina,
Molina present.
Roth,
Roth here.
Sanchez, Silva, Strathman,
Strathman here.
Surges,
Surge is present.
Carver, Pepe,
Deppie here.
Williams,
Williams here.
Young, I do see you online. And Pirog.
Yes, I'm here.
We only have 12 people in. That is not a quorum.
So we do not have a quorum. And that
Any
includes the people who are
Or
Okay.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
No.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people in person. You would need 13 for the majority.
That is not a,
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Shepro.
Thank you, Mr. Shepro.
Yeah, Madam Chair, is the 12 include yourself?
Correct.
Anything? Then that is not a quorum of the board in the room.
Okay.
No. I believe Deb Allen is going to be participating remotely, but she
Not
is
in the
not
room.
yet here
But she's not in the room.
Oh, it's
You
gotta
have to
be
have a
in the
quorum
room.
in the
The
room.
warm bodies in
in the
the room.
room. She's not coming. This meeting then can continue on, and as tradition with the committee, the whole, it'll be informational only. There will be no voting or decision making here. So we are all clear.
Minutes will be kept, though.
Minutes will be kept.
I'm not gonna
That is correct.
stay here.
Okay, so now we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Juby, why don't you lead us in the pledge, please?
For non-meeting.
Technically, since this is not a meeting, it's only a meeting for Open Meetings Act purposes, so I don't know that any of the other items are necessarily appropriate. It doesn't mean you couldn't do it
Why
anyway.
don't we do the pledge? It's always a nice.
Pledge, yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Juby. We will not be approving the minutes. There is no public comment.
You got the key for the truck?
And
For key, vacuum. You got.
thank you. All right, so with this group of honorary assembled, I would like to move the facilities master plan update to the head of the meeting. Mr. Caius has agreed to this because we have architects here and planners here waiting for us. And we will then have the fabulous Rock River Trail following and the King County Economic Development update last, bringing up the rear. So with all of that, please, Jason, it's all yours.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. So today, we want to walk you through what we're calling midpoint update for our scenario planning. We've been working through a lot of different options, studying the master plan, both for the judicial part of the county and county government side. Here we go. Okay. So just kind of to recap, I think I talked about this a little bit at admin. So those of you that were at admin, you'll remember this. We've already completed stage one, which was our visioning, planning priorities process. We're right in the middle of stage two now, which is a 4-month process. And as I said, this is really kind of our midpoint update to show you work in progress, the various scenarios we've looked at and feedback we've gotten from the steering groups. That's kind of leading us down to a narrowing of some of the scenarios. So just kind of quick recap and orientation. We're looking at a number of existing facilities. So this is just a quick graphic map of where your prime facilities are. The upper left there being the Judicial Center campus. The lower left is the campus we're at here, the current government campus. Upper right is the Randall Road or Cane Branch Court location, where which also includes the circuit court clerk and some storage space. And then the lower right is the Fabian Parkway campus, which years back was the old jail site. We've got a couple other buildings on that campus that are undergoing demolition right now that are not being used. So that really is a pretty clean and open campus site. A little closer? Yes. Okay. Is that better? Okay, good. So that's just to kind of orient. These are some of the main properties we're looking at. We're also looking at satellite properties. I'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation, but these are some of the priority sites. So I'm going to start today with talking about judicial planning. And just to kind of set the stage a little bit, we've been meeting with the steering group representatives, both on the government side and judicial. So judicial is made up of chief judge, state's attorney, public defender, court services, really all the key users in the judicial side. We've had meetings on May 3rd and May 31st to do a deeper dive into some specifics on planning. And a lot of the content you see here has been presented to the judiciary. We've gotten feedback. We've actually, in this part, gotten to a pretty good consensus with the steering group on what really is a preferred option. But before I get into that, one of the key things we've been focusing on is just continuing to try to consolidate judicial functions into one primary location. So there's still going to be satellite locations, satellite branch courts in Aurora and Elgin. We'll talk about that some more. But right now, one of the challenges that in the current operation is a major component of the judicial core functions, that being the circuit clerk, is at the Cane Branch Court location, so separated from the Judicial Center. We've also got the traffic court there as well, and the diagnostic center, both which are tied to core judicial operations. So the consensus amongst that steering group and really even through the planning process is to try to take those core functions and move them to the Judicial Center campus. So that really includes a good amount of square footage in those functions. One other piece that we've been talking about is there's a number of courtrooms at the 3rd Street, the old courthouse. 4 of them are a bit challenged by the function of that building being such an old building. They're not able to accommodate multiple defendants or multiple juries. in major cases. So those would be law division cases or chancery. So the model we're looking at right now is ideally to take 4 of the courtrooms that are at the 3rd Street Courthouse and relocate those to the Judicial Center as well, to provide a little bit more modern accommodations, proper sizing and so forth to accommodate those kind of trials. The balance, though, of the courtrooms at 3rd Street would remain there, and the intent right now is to maintain the 3rd Street Courthouse. So I just wanted to set the stage a little bit with that in terms of how we're thinking about some of the options. So the first option we'll look at here, these are just different scenarios on how we can do expansion of the Judicial Center. We've got 3 different scenarios to look at here this afternoon. So in that sort of golden yellow color, and then the white going off to the right, that's the existing Judicial Center building. 4-story building, right around 180,000 square feet. And then the blue block going up toward the top of the screen is an option for expansion to the facility. So right now, there's a large grass area kind of just as you enter the site off of 38. And this option envisions building a new expansion to the building that right now is, we're saying, approximately 190,000 square feet. We're still fine tuning that number. A lot of that driven by some further discussions with the state's attorney. We have a lot of good data that came out of our prior space needs analysis work, but through this process, we've been kind of looking at anything that might have changed even in the last year or other thinking. So I say approximately 190,000 square feet. That number may adjust a little bit as we fine tune the plan.
I'm sorry, could you put the surges, could you point out where the solar field is on this?
Yeah, so if you go to the south of the building there's the stormwater detention basin at the lower part of the screen. It would actually be south of that, off the images shown here.
Gotcha, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, we're really kind of focusing in a zone that's directly connected to the Judicial Center, and the immediately surrounding parking lots is kind of our focal area for these expansion concepts. One other concept here, as we continue to bring more functions, personnel, visitors to the site, we know that there's going to be a need for additional parking. In this scenario, we'll be taking up really the remaining buildable area for the building expansion. And in kind of the purple color to the left side of the screen is a proposal for a structured parking deck to accommodate the additional parking. So this is what we're calling our first option, option A. Option B,
Pardon me?
yes.
Okay. Where's the purple part? I don't see a purple.
It's
kind of gray.
to the left there. Mavis.
The future. Let me, let it
Sorry.
answer, please.
Yeah, it would be sort of the gray, I guess, grayish purple color to the left.
To the left?
Yeah, here I don't know if I have a laser pointer here, this area right here.
Oh, all right, thank you.
Those watching online won't be seeing that, but so yeah, that would be a proposed parking deck on the campus. So option 2, just a little bit different configuration, same square footages, same details in terms of how it comes together. But in this scenario, we're proposing expanding to the left, basically, which would be kind of northwest. This plan is turned a little bit, but what this does for us is gives us ability to do expansion of the building, and then look at using the grass area as you enter the site for additional parking expansion. So one of the things we're trying to think about here is what's the most cost-effective way to do expansion at the site. In this scenario, we're looking at building additional surface parking rather than structured parking. We're still fine-tuning the exact number of parking spaces, but the prime objective with this is to be able to expand parking in a far more cost-effective way by doing it as surface parking rather than parking structure.
Yes. Ms.
Is it
Bates.
secure parking for the employees or open parking?
The parking that would be in the grass area would be public parking. But one of the things we've considered here is the area here behind the addition. That area would kind of be, I'll say, cut off a little bit for public. It wouldn't be quite as usable because we want to bring all the public through security screening. So that area could be secured even with just some fencing or some other type of security, or dedicated as sort of staff parking. So actually, in the other concept, option A, A similar scenario could be achieved by making a portion of the parking deck secured parking, but that's something that we've had discussions about. I know there's a very limited amount of secured parking just for a couple, just for judges right now, right at the back side of the building, kind of as you're heading over toward the jail. But there's been a lot of interest from multiple stakeholders on the judicial side to have more secured parking on the campus.
So yes, it would be.
Microphone, please.
done.
Yes.
So yes, that could be done. The secure parking could be added.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So one other thing I want to note, the area here, I think those that are familiar with the current judicial center layout, one wing of the building is predominantly courtrooms. The wing that kind of heads over toward the jail side. And the other wing is really office functions. So court services, public defender, and state's attorney. So one of the things we're looking at is trying to reorganize that wing of the building to accommodate the expansion requirements for the different office holders. In each of these scenarios, what we're looking to do, state's attorney is currently on the 3rd floor, and we're looking to move the state's attorney into the new addition because it's got a little bit larger footprint. The state's attorney's got a pretty significant need of additional space. And then we would kind of reorganize public defender and court services on floors 2 and 3. We would displace a couple functions like the law library, jury assembly, and just reorganize those within the building so that we could accommodate additional security screening. We could get a better placement of the law library, which really functions more as a self-help legal center, get that more closely connected to the front entry of the building. So trying to solve a number of operational issues for better efficiency and wayfinding within the building in each of these concepts.
Question? Yes.
Yes.
Do any of these options involve also moving to circuit clerk?
Yeah, sorry. As I said, kind of at the beginning, we're trying to look to consolidate as many things as we can. So every one of these options includes moving the circuit clerk to the building, moving the Keene Branch Court at the Randall Road facility, that traffic court, the diagnostic center, which is at that building. They would all be moved into this building. And then we're also looking at 4 courtrooms, law courts and a chancery court from the 3rd Street Courthouse into the building. And then planning for the expansion of the different office holders. We're also planning for 7 additional courtrooms. Those wouldn't be needed right away, but as we look out to the year 2050 in the planning horizon here, we're accommodating space to build out those courtrooms as well. So this isn't just solving a today need. The intent is to plan it in such a way that it solves the long-term need as we've identified through the space needs analysis. Now,
You've got very different square footages on these options. You gonna address that?
On options A and B, they're the same. Both are 189,000 new square feet. Renovation, I think, is same as well. One of the differences with option A is we're referencing some a structured parking deck. Option C, I'll explain that in a minute when I get to it, why that one's different.
Sorry.
And you mentioned, Jason, that you're looking at towards the future for 4 additional new courtrooms,
7.
7. And they will be in either option A or option B planned.
Yeah, every one of these scenarios is planned to accommodate that long-term need. The only difference with C, which I'll get to in a minute, is it's more of a phased approach for that.
Okay, okay. And
All of those courtrooms will be taken up by moving them from 3rd Street.
The 7 is in addition to the courtrooms coming over from 3rd Street. So it'd
it's
be
11
12,
11 altogether.
12. The 12th one is the Keene Branch Court.
Okay.
From Randall
thanks. Of course, of course. So one's planned for future needs, would that space be used since it's going to be there with the unfinished space?
Well, so you have options there. I would say, one scenario we've seen a lot of times when you're building a building like this to accommodate growth is you might leave some of the space as just shelled, unfinished space. That's something we can get into fine tuning the recommendation on that once we determine which scenario is preferred. But that's a good scenario. We actually, when we did the courthouse for Will County, we had planned for 2 floors of that courthouse, which was going to be, I think, 10 courtrooms to be unfinished shell space. They opted to, in the middle of their construction sequence, to go ahead and get them built out. They had some additional funding that they weren't sure they were going to have down the road, so they went ahead and built them all out at once. So you've got some flexibility there. But one thing I'll say is, you know, one of the biggest challenges right now is this building was planned for additions, and they didn't happen to date. So there's been just a continuing, you know, tightening of space and running out of space. So, you know, I know it's not always financially feasible, but I always try to recommend anytime you can to try to build for a little longer time horizon, because, you know, things come up. I mean, we just had discussions, you know, the Safety Act and some of the requirements and the need for additional staff. And if you don't have any excess space, then you're not only fighting an issue of how do you deal with additional staffing, but then where to put them as well. So I think our recommendation is to try to build the footprint big enough that you can accommodate that long-term need. And then you've got flexibility as to whether you build it all out at once or you build the shell and do additional build out later.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I covered everything on option B here. So option C, this is a little bit more of a phased approach. It gets the same end goal, but it looks at doing it in two separate phases. So phase one would focus largely on some of the most pressing needs of the office holders. So state's attorney, public defender, court services, trying to accommodate those needs. What we know right now is that we don't absolutely need an additional courtroom right now. This scenario would still incorporate the circuit clerk moving over here, so nothing changes with that. But there's a little bit of a time horizon where you could leave the existing courtroom count as is, and then in a second phase, some years down the road, you could build another addition to the building, which would accommodate the expansion of the courtroom. So phase or option C here, phase one would really be focused on the offices. We would again look at building the additional parking that's required in the current grass area as you enter the facility. And then fast forward down the road, what we would look at is doing another addition to the building that would accommodate courtroom expansion and you know, other spaces to support those courtrooms as needed. So in this scenario, the differences in square footage, it's just done in a couple different phases to get to this similar end total. One of the challenges with this is you end up building parking in the grass area, and then at some point in the future, when you do the second phase expansion, you displace parking you just built, and then you have to go ahead and build the deck afterward. The other challenge we've seen with this is, you know, go further down the road in the planning horizon, something new comes up, there's a different change. You're starting to limit your ability to continue to expand at the site. So it would be a matter of timing, maybe the second phase, the blue, perhaps, let's just say that's 15 years down the road, just to pick a number. If something has changed, then you could build that expansion a little bit bigger. But let's say you've built out both of these wing expansions. If you get into a scenario where you need to expand again, it just becomes a little bit more problematic. You're starting to run out of outlets for further expansion. So, but this is taking the same end goal components and just kind of breaking it into two separate phases. So what I'll do here is I think you won't be able to read this on the screen, but that's why we brought some printouts today. We've kind of identified some of the you know, pros and cons of the different options. I'll say that as we talk through this with the judiciary, there was a pretty strong preference for option B. I think there was quite a bit of concern about trying to do phased expansion. You know, I think that's sometimes one of those things where, you know, you have a tendency when you do that to just address a more immediate need. And then, you know, as I was just saying, you know, something new comes up a couple years out that you weren't expecting, and you're already in a problem again. And it's just a little bit more challenging to try to take on two significant projects back to back. So there was quite a bit of concern about option C. There's also a situation where, as I said, you're kind of building space, and then in short time thereafter, you're displacing something you already built in favor of something else. So it becomes more costly. Total cost, your cost for options A and B is going to be more to execute the first phase. But if you take that total and compare it to the total you'd build for option C, C would be far more expensive. It would just be done over time. A lot of that's driven by, just regular inflation. So if you take the second phase of option C, which is on the order of 76 to 90 or 100,000 square feet, fast forward, let's say it's 10, 15 years, you're talking a pretty healthy inflation rate that's going to drive your total cost up. So total cost to implement is going to be more. It just would be spread out over a couple different timeframes. So as we talked with the steering group, that option was not favored really at all. And then we really tried to focus in on options A and B. And the general consensus was that we felt option B was just going to give a better solution. I think you can implement it with a little bit less cost on the front end because you can take advantage of surface parking build out rather than building structured parking at somewhere in the order of 8 to 10 times the cost per space. And the other big thing with this is, that's the main entry of the site. So it's kind of nice from a wayfinding standpoint that you come in, you can look across the grass area or parking area. It's unobstructed view toward the judicial center and really clearly get oriented as to where you're going. I think most people that are going to court are a little bit nervous as it is. And, if the first thing you have is you come into the site and you're confronted with the front end of a building that's not the entry, and you're immediately, having to figure out which way you want to go on parking, that becomes a little bit more challenging. And the other thing is we build across the ring road. So there's a road that runs right in front of the main entry right now. That's preserved in option B, which is nice in terms of site circulation. In option A, we're basically building a security screening area right on top of that road, and then continuing out to build the expansion of the building. So the site becomes kind of cut off from one side to the other. So we did have discussions about, could you kind of continue the road and do it as like a, kind of a tunnel under the building, if you will. I mean, at grade, but just, kind of bridge across over the top of it. It's possible, not a preferred solution when you're talking about a, secured complex. So for those reasons, the general consensus of the group was to go with option B. I guess I missed clicking on a couple slides. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I mean, there's not a whole lot of options to expand. We're not talking about building standalone buildings. It's just totally inefficient. You end up with a major duplication of security. And that's something that came up in steering group, but building a standalone on the site doesn't make sense from an operational standpoint. Plus, you've got office holders that are going back and forth to court all day long. So there's really not a lot of different ways to make this work. These are the three, prime options. And right now the recommendation is to continue to progress with option B. So I'll pause there to take any questions on the judicial side.
Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Iqbal.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Microphone, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'm confused that this is the first reading and we are told this option B is the chosen option. I don't know how it came about.
I believe that was from the focus group at the judicial center, their representatives,
Who?
the judicial.
They chose it.
Yes, correct. That is their recommendation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would like to say that I like the idea of consolidation. That's a good idea, but I don't think you went far enough.
You like the idea of what, please?
Hmm?
Is that consolidation? Okay.
Yeah. Instead of having many roofs, I think that was a concern. Why not have just one building that would be multifunctional, would have a parking at a few floors, and then up on the top would be the floors that you need. There is no reason for us to limit the roof level to the existing roof level or match it. It can go higher, it can go taller. And I believe the soil, I don't know if you have a data or not, but we can look at it and see. I think it can accommodate.
So would you be then referring to limiting the Third Street Courthouse and consolidating all those functions into the
I
building?
mean, if
Because
you
that's
have
the
two or
only
three,
main function.
number one, let's look at option B. You have this purple, you call it? That's on this side, on the left side, the blue one. And it says, there's a purple, and then up front, you have the parking. Why not combine them one on top of the other?
And is it option B you're speaking of?
B is what.
So I think what the suggestion is parking deck on first 2 or 3 floors, or perhaps a sub one or a half sub one. And with parking deck, and then on top of the parking deck, there's office building.
Office building, yeah.
Yeah, it can be done. I would say that that's a far more costly way of implementing a solution that we don't know would be necessary. I think our recommendation would be to focus first on building surface parking. Structured parking is incredibly expensive to build, and if you don't have to build it, I would try to avoid it. So that's partly why everyone was leaning toward option B as a start. I'm not going to say that you might not have to build some structured parking down the road. The other issue to take into account is if you're doing just pure office functions on top of a parking deck, that works fairly well from a structural standpoint, although structural grid for a parking deck is a lot different than what you would do for an office building, and almost doesn't work, or it's very costly to do it if you put courtrooms on top of it, because courtrooms have a very specific structural base sizing that does not align well with a structural deck. So that would further drive up the cost of the structural deck. So certainly those are options that could be done, but I'd say options to avoid unless they were absolutely necessary. And we don't believe that's necessary at this point. Now, the only, I guess maybe question I'd ask back is, we're proposing to consolidate, and this was kind of the consensus of the judicial steering group, most all of the functions. Ones that would not be consolidated would be other branch courts like Aurora and Elgin, and those are location specific. So that's serving population where they are. The only other, I'll say, consolidation opportunity would be to take all of the courtrooms out of the 3rd Street Courthouse and move them into this building. That's certainly an option. It's been discussed on and off over the years. I think the general consensus right now is that building still performs well. There's a number of courtrooms that work fine in that building. It's an iconic building in downtown Geneva here. And I think the concern was to completely step away from that building. There's not another use for the building identified right now, and that may not be very well received. And I also think, while it does have a little bit of duplication of some operations, the courts in that building are more of a non-criminal function, and it works out okay to have those separated from the rest of the courtrooms in the judicial center. So right now, I'd say the general consensus was, so that we don't make the plan even bigger and more costly, is to consolidate everything but all the functions at 3rd Street except for 4 courtrooms, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. I think the 3rd Street is a historic building, and we should keep it, number one. My other question is that you are bringing the traffic court to the judicial center. I mean, if that is kind of a separate thing, it happens in 3 hours. There's a lot of people come and then they go. So it creates if it's working at Randall Hall, Randall Road, then why should we bring it over here?
I think the idea was to just try to consolidate many of those things. We know we want to move the clerk over. I think as we talked about, building an addition, it made sense to move the diagnostic center over. So then what we're left with is 1 court over there, which means you still have to have all the security operations related to that 1 court. So it was really kind of with an eye toward operational efficiency to move that 1 courtroom over as well, so that you don't have to duplicate the intensity of security screening for just one courtroom that's remaining in the building.
So what would happen to the the Randall Road court or Montgomery Ward, I would say?
Yeah, it's a good question. I actually have a couple slides on that. I can go
What's
through
that?
those now, or if there's any other questions on these slides, I,
We have two more.
your
We have two
preference,
more.
yeah.
So why don't we
If you
that?
hold that for a moment, I'll
Okay.
explain that in a minute.
All right, okay, thank you.
Just a quick observation from someone who spent a lot of time in the old courthouse, and specifically the 4 courtrooms that you're talking about leaving. I disagree that they're adequate. From the practicing bar, they're not adequate. Had a hearing in the Judge Grady's courtroom, which would stay under this plan, which we had, 7 attorneys involved, and there was no room, and it's hard to see the witnesses, and then during the foreclosure crisis, and from 09 to 13, that courtroom was a mess. And then if you have a large collection call, again, that courtroom is inadequate. I'd be in favor for moving all the courtrooms there. I'm a fan of the building. It's a beautiful building, great rotunda. But from a practicing courtroom, I just don't think it's really that functional. That's my comment. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Juby.
So I have two questions. One, am I missing that all of the green space in front of the buildings is going to be eaten up? Is it, or do we have, like, with exceptions of a few borders, we're going to lose pretty much all the green space?
Well, we haven't fully designed the parking lot yet, but the vast majority of it in this scenario would probably become parking. I mean, we would recommend trying to incorporate as much landscaping within the parking lot as possible, but there's still going to be a significant amount of it that becomes paved parking area versus green space.
So the first thing someone is coming to see is just going to be a sea of cars in a parking lot, pretty much.
I mean, that could be screened, so it's not the first thing you're seeing. But yeah, I mean, our proposal is to put parking there, just so that we don't have to go to a parking deck right away. But
Okay,
that's certainly an option. I mean, if there's a desire to maintain more green space, absolutely could do a parking deck as a way to mitigate taking up all the paved area or the grass area, but it just comes at a pretty healthy cost.
yeah, I always have the desire to maintain more green
Sure.
space. So my second question is, when can we expect to see some numbers attached to any of these proposals?
Well, one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to kind of hone in. It's instead of trying to estimate dozens of different scenarios, we're trying to get a sense of where where we're narrowing down to. We wanted to share the feedback we've had from the steering groups today. And if the group here is comfortable with the direction we're going, our next step is to add more detail to these plans and to start to frame up some project budgets.
I personally don't understand how we can move forward without knowing. I mean, yeah, B is great, but if B is a incredibly expensive option, then we need to reconsider maybe what our first choice would be. So I understand the process. And I agree with the steering committee who said that that's the one that works out best for them. But until there's dollars attached, I think it's really hard to commit to any type of a going forward.
Okay, well, I mean, let me try to give you, it's not going to be an exact dollar value, but more or less expensive, I guess. We see option A as being significantly more expensive because you're building a parking deck, whereas the other one doesn't require a parking deck. Remember how many cars? How many cars in the deck? So I think I was going to see if we had a car count. I could try to do some quick math for you on what the cost might be, but it's a parking deck is generally between 8 and 10 times the cost per parking space versus surface parking. So we know that between option A and B, option B is going to be a more cost-effective solution. Option C, as I said, when you look at the whole of the project to accommodate all of the square footage, that will be more expensive than both of them because you're building a portion of that some years down the road, and you're going to be paying far more for the cost of the building due to inflation. But your first cost investment to build the first phase of option C would be less cost. So, if that becomes a significant driver, we can look at providing, order magnitude costs for those two options if that helps to narrow down some of the decision making.
I think that's smart. I really do. And I agree with you. I'm wondering about the cost as well. It may be too premature because there are so many options yet, and I can see why he would like to have make some recommendation of our first choice, and that if the first choice becomes cost prohibitive, we can move on to an additional choice to see what that comparison would be.
Yeah, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I do believe that option B and option C for ballpark number may be an appropriate estimate for us to have.
Yeah, and I'm not, I probably should have been more clear about that at the beginning. We're not dictating a solution here today. What I'm trying to do is give you feedback as we've gotten it, as we've looked at the different options on what seems to be kind of more of a preferred option. And the feedback from the steering groups, the end users for the different groups. So this kind of dialogue is exactly what we're looking for. If you feel like you'd like us to continue to carry, two different scenarios and look at a deeper dive on those and put pricing to them, happy to do that.
How is that for everybody? Feel comfortable with that? Yes. Yes. Okay. And you had a question?
No, not right now.
Okay. Okay. Yes.
When you're talking about the surface parking, are you considering any permeable?
Sure, that's definitely an option. There's not a lot of permeable at the site right now, but certainly this site has permeable pavers. That is a little bit more costly, but far better from water management standpoint, water quality standpoint. So that's definitely something that we could take a look at, is doing some permeable pavers as a scenario for the parking rather than traditional asphalt parking.
I believe the board would support that.
Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
So looking at Plan B, it looks like that would be another case of building parking lots and then building on top of it.
No, so the idea here with option B is to build one expansion that accommodates all the projected growth at one time. And so that you wouldn't, we don't see a scenario to build on that grass lot. I mean, that would be, many, many years down the road, or something significant changes that requires something new that we can't envision in our planning horizon. But in this scenario, we're looking to accommodate all of the projected need in a single expansion. And so we build the parking lot and it would stay that way.
But at the top of B, you've got 64 plus 64 stalls. And then that white square on top of that says future expansion, is that a building?
Well, the only thing we're saying there is that it gives you the opportunity for an outlet for something undetermined at this point. So we're just trying to highlight that this plan gives you a little bit more flexibility for the future, but we don't see anything right now in our planning timeline that would require additional building there. It's the what if scenario, just in case something changes that's significant. Here would be an example. Let's say, I don't know, 20, 25 years down the road, there's an individual or somebody that has a really strong desire to acquire the Third Street Courthouse from the county, and then you want to move those remaining functions to the site. This would preserve that opportunity to build a building expansion, and it would displace parking, but we don't see that as an eventuality right now.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So really any parking lot is a potential expansion, right? But that's a possibility.
Sure.
So Dale keeps laughing at everything. Dale, I'd like you to explain. May I ask Mr. Berman to explain his amusement? Why are you laughing?
Every open space, is a future parking lot, or every parking lot
Okay.
to be built on.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the good news here is that there's a lot of flexibility with this site. I mean, what we know though is that additions or additional square footage for this building wants to be directly connected, ideally from an operational standpoint. It allows you to have a single point of security screening, much better efficiency in terms of how the functions in the building work. But it's true. You could always build a building on a parking lot. You could always build a parking lot on a grass area. There's not, you've got kind of a quadrant here to do your work for the Judicial Center.
And thank you. I want to be mindful of time.
Yeah.
Because right now it's 10:05 and we've got two other speakers who are going to be presenting afterwards. We may have to, is this just all judicial, or we have?
Oh, this was the
government
easy
plan?
one.
Okay.
Here, why don't I'll keep going. So I just want to highlight, this is a graphic of the Third Street Courthouse, so it highlights the courtrooms on the third floor that would move out of Third Street over to the Judicial Center. We've also highlighted a couple of areas like jury space. We've highlighted CASA just for reference. And then there's a number of spaces that would remain at this building. So just kind of a quick orienting graphic. There's a question earlier about Randall Road and what would happen with that facility. So this is the Randall building here. The area in the green, which is currently the traffic court. One of the proposals we're considering is there's always a need for large meeting, training, conferencing space. So that room actually was originally designed for conferencing functions. It's really just been used as a courtroom, but with very little cost, it could be easily converted to provide some additional conferencing space for the county. So this is a scenario where you can hold on to the building, you own the building. You could use the old courtroom space with a very small investment as additional conferencing space, which is needed in the county. You could take the diagnostic center that could work very well as kind of swing or flex office space. Same could be true of the circuit clerk space. So some of this comes down to thinking about sequencing of projects. If you have to phase work at this campus at some point and you need to move people around, this building just works as a nice asset to be able to use for flex swing space. The area on the right side in the light yellow is right now storage. It's existing county clerk storage predominantly. But the circuit clerk area on the left side that's all white, that could serve as just bulk storage too. Or if somebody came along and offered the county a significant amount of money to buy the building, you could step away from it altogether. So it just gives you some flexibility in terms of this building. I would say hold on to it and use it with limited use until such time as there's another plan forward.
Would the white area that is for the circuit clerk, would that be large enough to be used as storage for the county?
Yeah, it's about 50,000 square feet. So that's a pretty rough number of what we've been talking about as a potential storage size. I think that there's always a question with storage is, does some of the stuff that's being stored really need to be stored? Is it a matter of, consolidating in that? But 50,000 square feet is a pretty significant amount of square footage and would accommodate, I would say, accommodate all the county storage needs.
Including the voting machines.
Yeah, because right now the voting machines are already stored in the building on the east, or I guess that'd be the north side, the right side of the screen. The north is to the right here. So yeah, that could stay as is, and you'd have an extra 50,000 square feet to use for any storage that you'd like.
Okay, very good. Any questions on this building on Randall Road?
This is Alan.
Yes, Sal.
We discovered a solution to an awful problem almost by accident. And the awful problem was lots and lots of cars for that branch court, lots of people needing to go through security and being out in the elements while they went through security, and using the branch court for that fast use courtroom that people are basically in and out. It's just such a good solution that I'm having trouble climbing away from it. I'm sure that you have good answers and I'd like to hear them, but this moved a whole lot of cars and traffic with, one or two people in a car over to a place where it wasn't a problem anymore. And the people got in and out of that courtroom and got back in their cars and left. And it just seemed like a really workable solution. Is there any way to move that back into the Judicial Center that has those advantages? Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess, the general consensus of the Judicial Steering Group was to consolidate as much as possible. I think that there could be a scenario to keep the traffic court here. Although really, I think what's happened recently is that the number of people that are coming in person to traffic court just isn't as much as it used to be. This is a court call now that I think has taken better advantage of some remote participation too. So what we've gotten from the judiciary is that the demand for parking and throughput of people coming to court there is less than it was at the time it was moved to this location. So I think some of that pressure is just reduced a little bit, which made everybody feel more comfortable bringing it back to the Judicial Center campus and consolidating those operational functions and saving on operating cost.
That's a great answer.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, I'll keep going then. So I guess the takeaway is let's hold on to maybe option B and C right now and continue to explore that in more detail. So that's how we'll proceed with the judicial planning. So government, actually, this is the longer one. So I'll try to go as quickly as I can here. I guess the first thing I wanted to highlight is, some may ask, like, why are we even talking about it here, right? I mean, you have buildings, work's getting done, but I'll say that there's a number of issues with this campus. You've got fire, life safety situations here. When the buildings were built, they met code. They don't meet code anymore. This building in particular doesn't have fire sprinklers, which is doesn't meet current codes. It's grandfathered in, but it's not, there's a reason why the codes have changed. There's a lot of other code issues that don't comply here in terms of bathrooms and other issues. Accessibility is a significant challenge. I know that's been talked about many times. Understand somebody even fell leaving the building not too long ago. So I think what we're seeing here is that as we look at a master plan, we're looking at trying to find solutions that solve big problems. And when you think about, not meeting current codes, accessibility, those kind of things, those are county liability issues. And that's why we're even talking about doing work on this building. So I wanted to kind of set the stage with that. We've been looking to develop some costing models to determine what your cost to just even bring things into compliance with code. I don't have that for you here tonight, but as we continue to progress on this, there's an initial investment just to even get current. And to make that happen, you're going to lose a lot of working square footage. Take the bathrooms, for example. I would just say by, rough estimation that the bathrooms are like a quarter of the size they need to be code compliant. So if you take each bathroom space and multiply it times 4 in terms of its square footage, you're displacing offices, and then you need more square footage. So it's kind of a compounding effect. So just wanted to set the stage with that as a consideration as to why we're even talking about doing work for the government campus. And that's just the front end. We still know that there's going to be a growth in space needs too. And none of that can be accommodated in the buildings as they stand now. So next, I just really we're looking at 3 big site ideas. The upper left, as I said before, the Judicial Center campus. We've got a couple of scenarios to show you of building a new government center at that campus. Lower left is where we are now. We've got a number of scenarios on how to make this a better campus by preserving various assets at the campus and building some new. And then we've got Fabian Parkway is essentially a clean slate for a potential site for a new government center as well. And I wanted to just maybe, if you took out, if everything was equal, if all the sites were clean, ready to develop sites, I just curious, is there any feedback from the group here tonight as to whether, one site feels like a better location than another? Just again, if everything was equal, I know it's not equal in this scenario. We'll talk about where it's not equal, but if everything was equal, does it feel like the government campus should stay here for some reason? Does it belong out at the judicial campus so you continue to consolidate, or look at a new clean area like Fabian Parkway? I was looking to see if we could get some feedback on that this evening.
Mr. Linder.
I think that question, if we're talking about, we had raw land in all 3 places. Here we're, on the bus route, we're walking distance to the train station, we're walking distance to a place to get lunch. We're right on main highway. That's, I think, just in terms of a site, if they were all raw, available to build, I think this is the best site.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Mr. Roth.
Roth here. I favor the Fabian because it's a clean sheet. We can design for the future.
She's saying they're all.
Yeah, I know. Well, no, the comment, Jason.
Yeah.
Yes. Fabian.
I do have one concern about, a legal concern about the Judicial Center campus. Our county seal is in Geneva. We'd have to go through some pretty austere legal hoops to move the seal, the state seal from Geneva, where we found it, to St. Charles.
Yeah, that's, that's come up a couple times and we're digging into the details of that from a legal standpoint. In this scenario we talked about just a minute ago for judicial, we would still maintain a county asset in Geneva, that being the Third Street Courthouse. So question would be, do you need to have an office in that building to be compliant with the requirements?
It's the county board's office is where the seal sits.
Okay. Okay. Any other?
And while we have two wonderful options in Geneva, I don't see we need to jump through that expense to be able to move to judicial campus. And I agree with Mr. Linder. I do think having a clean slate is extraordinary, filled with great opportunity. But here we do have transportation. We have adequate busing here. It's very walkable between Third Street Courthouse and here. It's a lovely site and it does have some historical value to it, which I will not argue with. It's charming, it's pleasing. However, and then there's all the dots, which I think we have to be recognized.
True. Yeah, thanks for the feedback on that. I think it's true. There's two sites here that are in Geneva. Fabian's in Geneva as well. I think that I understand the point about proximity to the train and bus and all that. That's good information. So I think, we're just trying to get a number of different data points as to what would give one site a better sort of leg up than another in terms of preference. So that helps. Obviously, there's a lot more detail to dig into costs, like we've talked about the other ones, and we'll continue to fine tune that, but we'll throw that discussion into the mix as well.
And
Yes.
I think the continuity of keeping the site here would also be better for our constituents.
But more disrupting for the people working here because we'll be living perhaps under a significant construction zone for a long period of time. Yes. Ms. Judy.
So the only thing we actually need to keep on this property is that the county board itself. So that wouldn't preclude us from moving the clerk over to the judicial or even consolidating all of the public facing services outside of the county board, or even perhaps knocking a few of, I can't believe I even said that, knocking a few of the buildings down and building, a single building that all of the public facing people could go to, because then there wouldn't be a wayfinding problem. Then that would free up the room in here to be able to do the ADA compliance that we need to do and everything like that. It would keep us in the historic district, which is a great value, and it keeps us by the train, which I know everybody laughed at me when I said that was a big deal, but the train
it's a
and the
huge deal.
bus and the fact that people can walk and go to lunch is huge, which you can't do on any of the other campuses. You have to drive.
Mhm.
Surges here, Jubes, that's not the only reason we laughed at you, though.
Thanks, Les.
I concur with everybody. Leave it at that site.
Personally, I go for the Fabian site, To me, it would be an absolute mess to build something here while we're actually still working here. And to build something new at Fabian and then move over there. Me, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
I think that's where, if you think about it as just 3 locations without any impediments, I understand that this is a favored site. That's where, when the detail comes in, where it gets a little more challenging. I'll walk through some of the scenarios. I mean, anything's achievable, right? So it's just a question of, how much you spend, how long does it take, what's the disruption while it's going on. So that's kind of the finer detail we'll continue to get into as we start to narrow in a little bit on concepts.
And also cost.
Cost, of course, yes. Yeah, I mean, the issue of the county seat did come up, and we weren't sure if you could have a county board office at a location, but most all of the functions at a different location. Details, I'm not an expert in that, so I can't speak to it. But those are things we want to make sure we look at every issue like that and present it clearly, and that'll continue to happen as we progress. So why don't I keep moving forward here to get through the options. So I'm going to go through a couple scenarios we've looked at. We wanted to look at pretty much any option we could do on this current site. So this is an aerial view of the site, identifying the existing buildings in the dark gray. And then there's a orange colored building that we've added. So in this scenario, we say leave every building that exists, plan renovation to bring it into code compliance, bring it into better operational usability, long-term use. In this scenario, you're still short on square footage. So we'd be looking at doing another building on the campus. Not a favored option because it just makes the wayfinding more difficult, but we wanted to let you know that we didn't leave any stone unturned on this and are looking at all the options. This one preserves all the buildings on the campus, and we know that some of them are not in great condition. So this was really option A to solve it with this campus. Option B, in this scenario, we eliminate building B. E and F are probably your poorest condition buildings on the campus. E was the old corner building. F is really kind of male and various functions, not really usable for any office functions. So not prime assets. Your better buildings are A, B, and C. In all scenarios, G, that's the yellow house. We've left G on the property. Just preserving that building can be used just as it is now for various meetings and so forth. It doesn't bring a lot of value from a standpoint of square footage for offices, but it's got, some presence on the site. So all scenarios, we left building G in place. In this option, though, we eliminate building B. Each one of these scenarios, we're trying to look at more and more consolidation to help make wayfinding easier and just kind of produce sort of more modernly planned buildings. These buildings were not purpose-built, purpose-planned for the functions that are in them. Functions were just put into buildings that had other uses. So what happens in this scenario is we build a more sizable addition that kind of knits together buildings A and C, which would remain on site. There'd still be significant renovations and options or buildings A and C. Option B gets eliminated with the dashed outline there, and then the gray is additional parking. So we'd kind of reorient parking to come around the side and try to create a more prime entry either into a space in this zone of building A or from the back end of the site closer to the river coming into the new addition so that we could accommodate or start cleaning up some of these accessibility issues. So this is taking one step further toward consolidation. The next scenario, option C, takes it one step farther and eliminates building B and building C. One of the things we tried to grapple with here is if we think about some sort of a presence on the site, what do people recognize as the site? I mean, there's, benefits in many instances of preserving existing assets, existing buildings. That's understood. We're trying to think about something that would be more iconic or something that people associate with a preservation element. And certainly building A is kind of the first thing you see when you come to the site, this room, thinking about kind of what the uses were in the past. So this scenario eliminates B and C, which, building B doesn't work great. It's meeting the needs to some degree for the county clerk. Building C, a little bit better condition, but it's got all kinds of accessibility challenges because of how the building comes together with different entry points. So this gets rid of both of those options and builds a larger addition to consolidate many of the functions, reorients the main entry toward the backside of the site for accessibility, kind of creates a new public-facing services area in a really clean and efficient way. And then this building could be renovated for more of your kind of what I'll call back office, not public-facing functions. So that's option C. Option D on the site is to eliminate all the buildings with the exception of G. This has all kinds of challenges. It's very difficult you have to move everybody off the site to make this happen. You're using the site, but not using any of the assets on the site. So we looked at it, but I'll show you a little bit later that this is one we've kind of ruled out. We don't think is a really good scenario to move forward with. I'll quickly go through the two other sites. So this is the Judicial Center site. 3 options to look at here. So you can see the Judicial Center, the Adult Justice Center, the jail and sheriff's office, the multi-use building, and then the JJC on the property. So the first option we looked at is to site a new government center building on the south side of 38. We would, sorry.
All right, sorry.
Okay, so on the south side of 38, we'd kind of extend the ring road around. So it would really sit kind of behind to the east of the Juvenile Justice Center in the gold color, orange color there. That would still preserve all of the property you own on the north side of 38 is undeveloped in this scenario. So this view actually shows the location of the solar field. It's got the full site view south of the jail. The next scenario looks at placing the government center functions on the north side of 38. So you've got a nice swath of land there on the north side. So this maybe provides a little bit of separation between the functions, government on the north, judicial on the south, still close proximity. We've kind of oriented toward the west side. So you've got access off of 38 and Peck. So there's a lot of different scenarios that could happen here. What this does is preserves additional buildability on the south side for anything that may come up down the road for judicial. If there was a need for a new building or specialty building, specialty program, you're preserving some assets south of 38. Then the final solution, we called this the mega building option. So we just said, well, if we're building something significant onto the judicial center, would you take that as an opportunity to build all of your judicial growth and consolidate all of your government functions into one very large complex? Interesting idea, I think, but the concern here is it's just adding too much density of personnel to one location. You're forced to build multiple parking decks, I think, to make this work effectively. And just the intensity of security screening that happens at the judicial center is a lot more than somebody who's coming to pay their taxes, right? So we just wanted to look at this as a scenario, but we felt like this really wasn't going to be a good solution to move forward with. So then finally, this is Fabian Parkway. Kind of shows you a couple of the great buildings on the campus right now. The one to the far left stays, but the other ones are being eliminated. So you have a very large piece of property that's kind of clean and buildable. So we're showing a new building complex, and this could be kind of any shape that you want, but you can see that you can build a nice new government complex out there and still have a lot of land available. A couple of things we've talked about: health department. So health department's main office is in Aurora right now. There's an opportunity to move the health department out to this campus. It could be consolidated within a government center. It could be a standalone building. So this site and the judicial center site both, I think, accommodate that pretty cleanly. If we're renovating at this current government center site, it can be done. It's a little more tricky. We would just have to build a larger addition. Wouldn't work quite as well as a standalone building, but the judicial campus and the Fabian campus give a little more flexibility for that. So, and there's still a little bit of a debate in terms of what's the best solution for the health department. I'll talk about that more in a moment. So here's all of the scenarios together. And so what I'll walk you through right now is kind of a mix of feedback we got from the government steering group and some of our impressions and things we see as concerns with some of these that would make us inclined to rule some of them out. And I'll share that with you, and happy to get feedback on that.
Jason, before we don't forget the Amasa House on Fabian Parkway, there's another, and that is one of the oldest homes, I believe, certainly in Kane County, I think even in the state of Illinois. So I don't see that on the Fabian plan.
Yeah,
So
it's,
we can talk about that later, but just.
yeah, we understand. We're preserving that. We wouldn't eliminate that. It's just,
Don't accidentally knock it down.
no. Okay, so, oops, sorry, skipping ahead here. So, option A on the government site, keeping all the old buildings and building another one. I think it just makes the situation of wayfinding and where the offices are and all that, it just makes it worse. It makes it very difficult to address the accessibility issues. It is it's an option, but we didn't feel it was a good option, and neither did the government steering group. So we would not recommend proceeding to carry this solution forward to our next evaluation phase. Same kind of thing with option B. I mean, what we're thinking about is, let's try to find that good balance on this campus of preserving some of the square footage that you have, things that people would be connected with is a little bit more of a kind of a nice historic or older element on the campus, but really try to go a step farther to really address these accessibility issues, make really good modern space for public facing services. So you're not going floor to floor and meandering down hallways to get to different areas. And we think that this solution really gives you your best sweet spot of preserving some assets on the property, but then solving all of your other issues with a nicely scaled addition along the backside of Building A. I already talked a little bit about option D. It's just very difficult to execute this solution. You have to, move everybody out, demo everything, and then you're kind of wondering why, what do you stay on the campus for? You could do it much more cost effectively somewhere else.
And that there would be an option C. It looks like there'd be additional green space that would be accessed. And then the other question I have is, you're potentially building this wing addition. Would the existing buildings be able to remain in place except for, what is it, building?
Yeah, so I mean, the way the graphic is drawn, it kind of shows a little bit of an overlap of building C, but we would want to plan that building so that you could build a new building without demolishing any of the old buildings. You're going to have close proximity. You'll be near construction. There's some challenges for sure with, logistics and on the site and the noise and all that. But we think that there's a solution to be had where you can build this big addition without demoing the buildings. And then after people move in, then you get rid of the.
So
building
there'd be
B
no
and C.
disruption to just standard.
Well,
a little, but not.
There'd be sort of construction activity disruption, but you could stay in the buildings.
Okay, very good.
So that's that. We're feeling like all the different scenarios we looked at, that the one to carry forward on this campus is this option C. I'll go through the other ones. So as we look at the Judicial Center campus, we're thinking that option A is not an ideal scenario. We think it becomes a little bit more difficult to understand, which building you're going to. There's a nice cleanness about having government on the north side and judicial on the south side. Also, as I always say, we're always looking to preserve some real estate for things we don't know about today, things that could happen, 15, 20, 50 years down the road. So there's just a nice aspect of keeping the whole south side of 38 available for any judicial functions for the close proximity. So when it's an option between A and B, we're favoring option B over A. So therefore we've eliminated A. Also, we talked about option C, the mega building complex. I think the cost to implement all that at one time, really challenging. The density, there's a whole bunch of issues why this doesn't work well. The one benefit to it is it kind of consolidates a lot of things under one roof, one big central plant, but there's a lot of cost drawbacks to it and other issues we think that eclipse the benefit of the all under one roof. So as we look at carrying forward a solution for the Judicial Center campus, we would look to carry forward option B. And then option C doesn't have iterations. You could kind of move that building anywhere on the site. So what we're proposing, if that's the will of the board here, is to carry forward with our more detailed analysis and cost modeling these three options and do a deeper dive on the evaluation and bring that back to the group to look for a preferred solution of these three. So I'd be happy to take any questions on these before I close out with just two little last pieces.
I have a very strong opinion, but I'll keep it to myself for right now before I give it out. Yes.
Had you considered the Randall Road building for the health department?
We haven't looked at that, but I think that is a possibility. We're looking at a couple of different scenarios for the health department. So square footage wise, in terms of vacating the real estate that's vacated there would accommodate the health department.
It's an excellent idea. Yes.
I'm from Aurora and I would like to keep at least a health department satellite there. Is that part of a plan?
That would.
Yeah, I'll talk about that more in a moment, but yeah, that is a plan that we're proposing.
And in
Sally.
Elgin as well.
Okay.
Expanded out to Elgin. Yes, Mr. Tepe.
Personally, I don't, when I look at judicial center option B, I don't think it makes sense to move the rest of the government options to north of it, so I would leave that option out as far as costing would be. my suggestion.
Eliminate the judicial center option B and just have two options to move forward. Is that what you're proposing?
No, eliminate the government center part on the north part of that option,
Okay, well,
north part of 38.
okay, yeah, that would mean we wouldn't have a solution at all for government to move to that campus. Okay,
And my strong opinion, no, of course, this is my opinion, is not to move it to judicial campus at all.
Okay.
For the reasons I stated before.
okay.
I'm cool with that.
Any other feedback or questions on these before I move to the last piece?
I'll second
Yeah,
that motion.
Mr. Iqbal?
A short question on
You don't have
judicial, on judicial center, option B, you're showing something to the north of Route 38. I think that was a question Mr. TP had. Is this the health department?
No.
No. So, I guess, it's a terminology issue. We call this the judicial center site, but what we're talking about here is taking all of the county government functions and moving that. So all the functions in this campus would move to the north side of 38. The health department could be consolidated within that, or it could be a separate standalone building there as well. So it's not just the health department, it's all of the government functions.
So option B will have more buildings next to the judicial center plus north of it.
Yeah, we wanted to just focus on government only, so this would be coupled with what I showed you previously for the expansion of the judicial center for judicial functions. So you'd be expanding the judicial center to solve the judicial needs and then building a new government center, stepping away from this campus, moving a new government center on the north side. So it'd be two components to build out the whole plan.
So would this be in addition to option C in government center?
No, it'd be instead of option C for the government center.
So if we have this option B, judicial center, we have no other need for any other buildings. That's what you're saying.
Well, what we would do is we would take option B from the judicial solutions that we just talked about to solve judicial, and then this option at the site for government functions, and we would step away from this campus altogether.
But that would be in St. Charles area, not in
That's
Geneva.
correct.
So we have the,
Correct. Yeah, well, it's unincorporated right now, but it's and there's discussion about, would it be in, I think it's in St. Charles planning boundary right now. So yeah, you maybe would maintain unincorporated, or it would become incorporated into St. Charles. I mean, there may be some scenarios to incorporate into Geneva, but I really can't speak to that today. So it's right now it's planned as St. Charles.
You want to see Kevin Burns' head explode?
Kevin Burns has no interest in the 38 property.
We're eliminating judicial center.
That's my suggestion, but it's
I-
up to the board's
Anything
decision.
today, don't get crazy, This is the idea is to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, this feedback is what we're looking for. I mean, the analysis is a mix of, objective evaluation, looking at challenges of a property, additional costs. I mean, there's some other challenges with the judicial center. We know that there's infrastructure upgrades that are needed. There may be roadway upgrades that are needed to make that happen. So we're going to continue to do all that work. We're only at the midpoint. We're trying to get some general consensus. I guess I'm hearing a number of board members indicating there's not a preference for the judicial center site, but I would like to carry that forward to completion, to have 3 different options. And then, we'll take in all the feedback here too, along with the cost analysis and all that, and bring that back for kind of a final selection of what is the preferred solution for government functions.
Mr. Linder?
I'm not certain of this, but the judicial center currently is in St. Charles.
That's
We
correct.
go across the street north, even if we were able to do some sort of a twisty thing there to make that Geneva. Geneva has to be contiguous, doesn't it? Doesn't it have to connect to the rest of Geneva?
Correct. There is,
There is contiguity.
there is, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but it is my understanding that there may be some interest that has been expressed of annexing that property where the judicial center is into Geneva. There's been conversation about that, but there is no interest in annexing the 38 property that would be to the north of it.
Yeah.
None. So the campus of this government center would be located in St. Charles. And again, we're going back to that issue with the county seal.
And
We were developed in Geneva. It started in Geneva. And I think that's a really big leap when we have other properties available that are within Geneva, that we don't have to make that seismic leap for the convenience of a building.
especially when you consider going on 200 years of friction between St. Charles and Geneva, trying to make that swap would be difficult.
I think.
I
so.
also just think, I've been out there to the judicial center now with the jail and JJC. It's a confusing thing to drive up to if you haven't been there. There's just stuff everywhere. And I don't think adding anything more out there is a good idea. I think doing what we have to do to enlarge that, whatever, but bringing in a bunch more functions out there, I think that's confusing. I would prefer to keep judicial center and do government
I
here or there.
I
Here,
will not
preferably.
argue with you on that thought. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Roth here. I worked at the Sears site out in Hoffman and people would be lost for days trying to find their way around. So,
Okay,
and it's huge.
that's huge.
So.
Yes, Ms. Bates.
I would like to express my opinion that I think government center option C is my preference. To me, it looks the most sustainable, would be the best reuse of existing buildings. Probably from my point of view, the least expensive, good wayfinding with this new entrance. Keeps our vision of the river, the river view, and it looks cool.
Well, especially if there's glass windows so we can see the forest preserve area. So I think that's, yeah, I like that version the best. Okay, we're almost
Okay.
5:30.
Yep, sorry, I'm almost done here. A lot of content to get into a short time here. So I just want to touch on a couple other ancillary pieces. So there's some very specialized functions. Right now on the campus, you've got CANECOM 911 Center, the Emergency Management Group. I think through discussions in the steering group meetings, there's a preference. I think CANECOM in particular, if they had their preference, would like to be in an area that's a little farther away from public traffic. It's a space that you don't need public going to. It's a secured facility, specialty facility, and it's not accommodated well here on this campus.
Right.
So we've looked at a couple different things of where CANECOM could go. If you did build, let's say you picked the Fabian campus, you could do a separate standalone area for CANECOM out there. There's a communications tower. There's some good synergy there. If you did end up going out to the judicial campus, or if you treated that as a separate element, CANECOM could be located there. There's some questions there in terms of backup dispatching centers and so forth that we're working through. I don't think we need to make a decision on that today. It's a small piece, but right now we're looking to decouple that from being within a government building, because it's not a really good compatible use. Emergency management, similar. I think emergency management, right now, some of the vehicles are accommodated at the multi-use facility at the Judicial Center campus. In terms of moving the office functions, emergency operations center, so forth, that could be a nice location for them in the future as well. So these are smaller elements, but I just want to highlight that. The couple yellow blocks here on the multi-use building, this is just a recognition that there's some parking challenges relative to the sheriff's operations and training and various things. So we're likely to be proposing some expansion of parking out there to accommodate just these ancillary issues. There's also that little orange box by the jail. There's some issues with loading and storage and so forth for the sheriff's operations. It doesn't work well. So if we could do something with a more enhanced loading dock, mini warehouse for the sheriff's operations specifically, that was a a desire that was expressed by the sheriff's office. As it relates to the health department, we know that the existing building in Aurora is in very poor condition. We've had discussions with the health department, and they're, I would say, 50-50 about whether moving the bulk of the functions to be combined near or within a government building in the Geneva area, or just staying where they are. Their headquarters, I'll call it, is already there in Aurora. It could stay that way, not in that building though, because of the condition. But we're kind of looking at that, could kind of go either way. We're going to continue that evaluation. We do know on the next slide here that there is a strong desire across the board to maintain satellite presence in Aurora and Elgin. And what I'll say is that the preference is to really try to consolidate that. Right now, you've got two buildings that you own really close to each other in the lower right graphic there in Aurora, 1330 and 1240 Highland. But the county clerk has some space in downtown Aurora. I think as we've talked about it, there's some other public facing office holders that would like to have some satellite presence to provide services a little closer to where the population lives. And I think where we're going right now is to build or develop kind of a combined facility that has health department satellite. Court services also has a pretty significant satellite presence in both Aurora and Elgin. We would also have your public facing functions, clerk, you could even have a treasurer outpost, various different functions there. And then one other thing that came up through discussions with the state's attorney is a concept of a neutral exchange site. So that's something we're thinking about for the central region here in Geneva. But state's attorney expressed a strong interest for having a component to that in the north and south region as well. What the neutral exchange site would be, if you have a divorce situation, shared custody of a child, but there's a contention between the divorced spouses. If they're exchanging custody, you can do it in a safe space. You can also have things like mediation proceedings or observe visitation kind of in one location. So the idea is if we're looking at building an asset there and combining a little bit more square footage can accommodate some other functions to help operationally. So those are all things we're thinking about. We think that there's good potential at one or the other of the two owned properties in Aurora to consolidate. Both of the buildings are in really poor condition. I would not recommend continuing on with those facilities, but the property could be usable. Elgin, it's all leased space. So still a bit of a question mark as to how to do the best consolidation, whether that's a new facility, buying an existing facility and renovating. We haven't quite come to a conclusion on that other than to say that there's a strong desire to have the satellite presence. So that is all I have for you this afternoon. So if there's any other questions or. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I'm sure we'll go back to many versions of this yet, but definitely, I think we'd like to get a cost analysis, at least ballpark cost analysis of the judicial choices, potential build out for that. I think there were two, is that correct? And then I believe most of us would enjoy getting at least an idea of building option C, keeping it here, and then what a potential build out would be for Fabian.
Yeah, we'll do that deeper analysis on all of those solutions. It sounds like as it relates to the government siting, other than I know there's not a lot of desire to move to the judicial campus, but I think it's worth carrying that just to test it against the other solutions. So the three that we showed is kind of more preferred. We'll go ahead and do the deeper analysis and cost analysis on all three of them. And then on the judicial side, we'll look at the steering group's preference of option B, but we'll bring option C back into play to look at cost scenarios on that as well.
Okay.
And that's our next step. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Fabulous Fox River.
You guys can leave now if you need to. Although this is a really interesting program.
But you've been here a long time already.
whatever $100 an hour. So, I have no idea. We're paying a lot.
Okay, are we set?
Set, ready.
Thank you. So I'm Karen Miller with the Development Department. And this evening, I'd like to bring to you the recently designated Fabulous Fox Water Trail. So on June 2nd, Secretary of the Interior, Deborah Holland, put out a press release designating 9 new national recreation trails, and the Fabulous Fox was one of them. We are the only water trail that was designated this year. The other 8 were land trails around the country. So what does this mean for Kane County? As I mentioned, designation by the Secretary of the Interior, which brings us status on a national level. National promotion and visibility. I have listed here most of the publications who have written articles, taken the press releases. A number of them have been national, as well as the press release that came out of Kane County also suggested some local coverage. I did an interview with WGN, which was aired earlier this week, I understand. I think a couple of times. So we're getting some good press on this at both a national and local level, which is good for tourism. Mutual support and knowledge sharing through the National Park Service. Now that we are part of that group and within the National Park Service, we can benefit from networking in that within the designated recreation and water trails. I will be speaking next week. I will be part of a webinar that the Park Service puts out every year to those groups who are interested possibly in working on creating a water trail in the country. And they've asked me to participate in that webinar to talk about my experiences with the Fabulous Fox. Also, opportunities to obtain technical assistance and sources of funding. The Park Service is creating a Legacy Trails grant program, which I'll be looking into to see if it will benefit us at all in Kane County and also other counties along the water trail. Positive economic impact from increased tourism. Back in, I'd say it was around 2013, there was an economic development study done on the Huron Water Trail, which is in Michigan, also a designated water trail. And what they determined, that was from 2010 to 2012, that there was an increase of $50 million along their water trail in economic development activity. Their water trail is shorter than ours. Ours is 158 miles. Theirs is 104 miles. It also includes rural and urban landscapes. But they saw that the increase in economic development came mostly in food and drink, transportation, recreation and entertainment, souvenirs and gifts, and lodging. So I would like to suggest that maybe sometime in the future, we look at doing an economic development study on the Fabulous Fox Water Trail to see what benefits we may accrue in the future. Also, stewardship and sustainability projects, including increased protection for outdoor and water resources. When you're out on the river, you get a totally different perspective of the Fox River and an appreciation for the environment and what goes on along the shores of the Fox River. We have a number of organizations that promote and host different environmental types of programs, cleanups, et cetera, along the river. And I think that the designation will help increase that appreciation. Also, improved public health and quality of life. Getting out on the river is good for your health. Also, it's good for public health, good for quality of life. Like I said, you get a different perspective when you're out on the river. Back during COVID, we did a series of 5 articles. I worked with the health department and with our transportation division on doing a series of 5 articles for Kane County Connects to encourage people to get outside for both their mental and physical health. Also access to networking and training opportunities, recreation, and special events through the Park Service. The Park Service partners with an organization called American Trails, which is a nonprofit organization that provides webinars and training for anyone, but also specifically for those of us that are part of the Park Service. So for those of you not familiar with the Fabulous Fox Water Trail, we are 158 fabulous miles across 2 states and 7 counties with over 70 public access sites. And our vision was to create a water trail from the headwaters up in Waukesha, Wisconsin, down to the confluence with the Illinois River in Ottawa, to provide suitable access to the public to enjoy the quiet and active recreation, scenic beauty, and abundant wildlife, and also historic and cultural features. Communities along the Fox River embrace stewardship and public engagement to provide a sense of place. So it takes a team. This is our core development team that was developed over the years we've been working on this. The National Park Service provided 3 years of free technical assistance to our team that our team applied for to help take us through the procedure that the Park Service uses in order to create a successful water trail. It also takes volunteers. We had almost 24 volunteers at the beginning of our process to collect access site data, more particularly in Illinois, so that we would have the details about the access sites, what it's like to portage around the dams, and also information on what it's like to paddle different segments along the river. And that information was used to create maps and a website. If you go on fabulousfoxwatertrail.org, you can see our entire trail at a glance. These orange boxes along the river show you the river miles at each of the access sites, and a river mile is calculated by starting at 0 down at the confluence with the Illinois River and working your way up north. Then you can also use our detailed search to pick what kind of amenities you might be interested in. Once you pick those, you will get a pop-up box for each of the access sites, which will give you detailed information about each of the access sites. You can see these icons that are in blue and purple, and that will tell you the amenities that are available. And there's also other detailed information in these pop-up boxes. You can zoom in for a closer look. You can also get directions on how to get to the access site of your choice. We also have printable maps. We've divided the river up into 14 segments, which allows us to provide maps that can be downloaded or they can be printed out. And so if you go onto the printable maps dropdown, you can see the index and pick which area you're interested in. And then you can download and print the individual map for that area, which includes all the access sites. It includes the river mile. It has the same icons that we saw in the last 2 screens and gives you all kinds of information about where you might choose to go to. Also, we have installed signage on each of the over 70 access sites along the river. You can see we have 2 different signs here. We have the one on the left, which tells you that you're on the Fabulous Fox. It tells you the name of the access site and what river mile you are at. We have 2 copies of that sign. One faces the land as you approach the access site, and a second copy faces the river. So if you're out on the river, you know where you are approaching. We also have the map sign, a copy of which faces the land, and that includes a map of where you are currently and gives you an idea of what is upstream and downstream in terms of other access sites. And we also have a list of safety tips and 2 ways that you can access our website with the web address, and then also a QR code that will bring you to the website. We also needed to develop a management plan for our application. The main part of our application was to show the Park Service that we along the Fox River have implemented these best management practices that you see here. And fortunately, we've had a lot of work that's being done by organizations, local governments, and stakeholders over the decades to create access sites, to create recreational opportunities and conservation projects, et cetera. So I was able to pull from all of this information to show the Park Service that we were implementing these best management practices. But in the future, we had to create a management plan to show that we were going to continue to implement these best management practices. So in the management plan, we have goals and objectives to meet for each of these BMPs. So as we move forward, implementation of the management plan, we were fortunate enough to receive from the county board approval for $1,240,000 of American Rescue Plan funding for planning, marketing, infrastructure for new and improved access sites and signage in Kane County. And then my department received a grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, Tourism and Attractions Grant for $270,000 for improvement to and construction of new access sites. And a second grant from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Travel and Tourism Grant for $100,000 for marketing. So we're moving ahead on implementing using these wonderful funds that we have now. So our application was submitted on November 2nd of last year to the National Water Trails System, which is a distinctive national network of exemplary water trails that are cooperatively supported and sustained. We were able to receive technical assistance from the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, which supports community-led natural resource conservation and outdoor recreation projects across the nation. And Angie Tornes in the picture to the left was our National Park Service staff who worked with us for 3 years. So after we submitted our application, the Park Service asked us if we could not include LaSalle County in our application. And that is because part of the criteria is that you need to have access sites within 5 miles of each other. And LaSalle County does not have that. As much as I tried to find access sites that might meet that criteria, that just wasn't possible. LaSalle County has a lot of privately owned land along the river, which is different from the other 7 counties, which have more publicly owned land where access sites can be available. But we don't want to forget about our friends in LaSalle County, and we're hoping in the future we may be able to add LaSalle County to the designated portion of the water trail. However, we are going to be also offering the data and the information that we already had collected about LaSalle County, and we were able to keep that on our website. We got permission from the Park Service to do that. So we are now part of the National Water Trails System. We are one of the blue dots that is on the map on the left. And I have to say that it looks like a lot of blue dots. Most of those are land-based recreation trails. I think there's about 30 water trails across the country, but we are included on the blue dot as a blue dot. And then on the right-hand side, we also have a web page on the National Park Service National Water Trails System website. This took a community of partners. We needed to obtain letters or resolution of permission from all of the landowners that owned access sites along the river. And this is a list of those divided up between Wisconsin and Illinois. We also needed to collect letters of resolution or letters or resolutions of support from different local governments, organizations, and elected officials along the river. And we received over 40 of those to include in our application. So I want to say a big thank you. The county board has been very supportive over these years that I've been working on this with my wonderful team. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to work on this wonderful project.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well earned, well earned. Oh, we've got hands up. Mr.
Okay.
Berman, why don't you go first?
Dale Berman, I think that part of the Fox and LaSalle County is the most picturesque part of the river. Doesn't the Conservation Foundation have property in Kendall or in LaSalle County?
They do.
Okay.
And I have been working with them closely for a long time now. I've been with the county for 23 years, and that's one of the first organizations that I started working with. And so, yes, they do, but the criteria is to have access sites within no more than 5 miles of each other. So
Oh.
if you're out on the river, yeah. But I'll keep working with the Conservation Foundation, and they're always looking for other land to preserve in LaSalle County as well as the other counties in the region. So
And you still put in on 52 in the river and get out in Dayton? But that's what I did years ago.
yeah, that is not considered to be a legitimate access site, but I know people use it.
It's beautiful.
It is beautiful down there with the bluffs down in LaSalle County. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I have a suggestion / request and the porta potties, but could you entertain the idea of putting a link on the website to the USGS water flow, which I need all the time because over 2,100 cubic feet per second, the Fox Valley Park District will cancel the race. So I'm always trying to find that gosh darn website before I go out.
Right.
So could you add a button for that to the Fabulous Fox?
If you go on our website, you'll see at the top, there's a list of drop-down menus. And if you go under the safety drop-down, that is one of the links
Oh, great.
on there already.
It's very important.
Yeah,
Okay,
I agree.
cool. And the porta potties.
And the porta potties.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I have watched this presentation when I was on the Jobs Committee, and I have one concern, and it's still the same concern, that the word dam is not mentioned in this presentation and not in the previous presentation and not on the brochures. And it should be. Because it is not 158 miles long. It is just between the two dams. That's what we have. And that's a dam is an intimidating thing for people. And we should bring it to the knowledge. I mean, before people go to the river, they should know that there's a dam.
I think that's on your mapping, isn't it?
Yes, if you look at our segment maps, I mentioned we have divided the river into 14 segments. And each of the maps is downloadable onto your phone or on your tablet when you're out on the river, or if you want to print it out before you go. But we definitely include all of the dams, and they are, I believe it's in a red triangle with an exclamation point in there, so that you are aware that there is a dam there. We have also included the portaging around the dam, which is in black dotted line. So yes, we do indicate so that people are aware that there are the dams out there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I'm sure that in time, one dam at a time will be.
Yep,
will
in
be done.
time.
Damn.
And we will be looking at future opportunities once the dams come out for where we might be able to add access sites.
Yeah, correct.
Which will be great.
A cleaner river for sure. All right. Any other questions? We've got one more presentation. This is fabulous news.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay, so you have an idea of with your economic development that we soon will like to get a report as well on the opportunities that this fabulous Fox River Trail will be presenting to Kane County's economic development.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's, Karen mentioned that we've already been planning that. So it's something that we'll be looking forward to. First of all, thank you everyone for staying late to listen to me. I appreciate it. You know me, I like.
But not least.
Yes, best. Third is the best, right? So some of you may have seen some of these slides before. We just recently had our economic development roundtable, which was 28 wonderful people from multiple municipalities, both government and other institutions to come talk about economic development. So, you know me, I'm really excited about this. So if I talk too fast or you have a question, please don't hesitate to stop me. First thing I want to bring up is, well, today I'll be talking mostly about our economic development strategy and organization for Kane County, which, you know, ARPA has allocated almost 3.8 million for. I just wanted to highlight that we also have two other programs in the pipeline that we will be working on, which is our Kane County Manufacturing Recovery and Sustainability Fund, which will be partnering up with the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, or IMEC, to help out our manufacturers. And also we have about 1.6 million allocated for the Kane County Tourism Recovery and Promotion for Sustainable Future Fund, which we are partnering up with our Elgin area CVB and our Aurora area CVB. If you were to talk to me last year and I were to talk about economic development, I would refer you to myself and Mark Van Kerkhoff. But since then, since the start of this year, our partnership and team has grown immensely. The first team I want to talk about briefly is the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership. You've heard me speak about it briefly, especially at the committee of the whole about 4 months ago. Again, the Kane County Board is committed to funding of $54,000 annually for 3 years for this. They are our research and RFI response assisters. Right now, I'm part of a committee to work on a regional sector asset mapping, which we're going to have plenty of maps so you can look at the Chicagoland region and see where our different manufacturing bases, our life sciences, and our TDLs, transportation, distribution, and logistics, where our key areas are, and especially those within our county. That'd be something I'm really looking forward to sharing once it's in its final form. The next person who's been a big help and has just started to join our team is our economic development advisor, John Grueling. He ran the Will County Center for Economic Development for 22 years, and we brought him on recently. He's going to serve as our advisor to not just us, but also to the board. He's going to assist in developing an economic development plan, as well as recommendations for an economic development organization for the county. He's working with us as GSEP on regional opportunities. I'll go into those a little bit more later. He's going to provide input regarding the launch of our public-private partnership economic development organization. And he's assisting in the identification and recruitment of community and business leaders for our EDO. Also, we had the pleasure of announcing our economic development strategic plan consultant, RW Ventures, at Jobs Committee last week. Their role is to create a plan that will identify assets and opportunities, develop customized strategies, turn strategies into concrete actions, build institutional capacity, and then execute. Now, on that beautiful red text on the right side there, it says 2024 launch an economic development organization for Kane County. And let me tell you how exciting it is to finally say those words, that we are working towards that. I've been with the county for 8 years, and it's been something we've been asked, why don't we have a choose to page? Why don't we have a Lake County partnership? And now we will start entering that equal footing to our competitive friendship with our neighboring counties. Just to remind you about the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership. I know.
It's a collegial fight.
Yeah, that's right. And we work well together. As I talk about with our partnership, it's an initiative of the 7 county board chairs of Northeastern Illinois and the city of Chicago, facilitated by CMAP and the Brookings Institute, with support from the Cyril fans at the Chicago Community Trust. They've been keeping me pretty busy these last couple months. I can't talk too much about the projects themselves, but know that there are plenty of projects looking at Kane County. And now we have a great support system, whereas in the past with the DCEO or Intersect Illinois, when a company was looking in the region, it was my job to work with our local partners to try and put on a response to those RFIs. And if any of you have ever worked with some of these site selectors, our response turnaround times can be anywhere from 3 weeks to 24 hours. So we have to be able to respond quickly to inquiries of data, inquiries of available sites, work with our partners. So now that we have a broad network of assistance, I'm much more able to execute on a lot of those. So just know that people are looking at Kane County and we are responding to them in the best way possible. In terms of our economic development strategic plan, RDB Ventures kind of laid out their inclusive economic development process. It's got 4 pillars. The market analysis will be the comprehensive assessment of our assets, our market barriers, our opportunities, and our existing initiatives. The strategic development will be tailored to those assets, the opportunities, and the targeted trajectories identified in the market analysis. Then we'll come along with our implementation planning, which is our specific activities to implement those strategies, adapt our best practices, and design, engage stakeholders, and market test that plan, and then evaluate its feasibility and effectiveness. And finally, at the end, we'll have our formative measure and design for our measurable goals, our metrics, and then continue to track our progress. Oh, this is so exciting. This is our project timeline. I'm happy to announce that we did receive an extension from DCO for our RISE grant. So they'll give us an additional 3 months to work on this planning process. Originally, the plan was to start end of June and have about 6 months. And working with RW Ventures, we realized that was not going to be enough time to put together an effective strategy that we would be really proud of. So we asked for an extension and we got it. So starting in July 1st, we're going to start with our project management and planning. The important part will be the market analysis. We are going to go a little bit quiet for that first month. We have a lot of data we need to work with and we need to find from our partners and from other sources. One really big positive of GCEP and that partnership is World Business Chicago's data team will be one of our key sources for a lot of information that we're going to need for this plan. And I'm really excited because I get to ask them for a lot of help. As you see too, there's different points. There's 3 points of stakeholder engagement along this process. I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go, but there will be different touches and different people along that process. And as we move through our strategic development, we're going to come back and engage people differently from what we've learned from the market analysis. And then up top, you can see about how when our findings, and then our first draft is due somewhere around November, December. January is when we plan to finalize it. And then in March, we plan to have a document to put forward to the board.
Oh, so are you're going to update us on the progress of this?
Yes. Oh, and may I suggest that you come to the jobs committee or listen on jobs committee, where every month I like to update with everything that I'm doing and sharing my progress on this. Little pitch.
And we could bring donuts if they would actually come.
I love donuts. Oh, I love donuts.
That's like build it and they'll come drink.
Exactly.
That's right. So when I talk about developing institutional capacity, I talk about the potential for an economic development organization. I don't have a complete vision of what that is because we are on a learning phase right now. But we will engage our stakeholders across public, private, and the civic sectors. We're going to iterate our analysis strategy and institutional development. And then we just have a kind of a structure in mind for a steering committee that's composed of high-level leadership, I think C-suite leaders. Then we'll have our day-to-day staff-level working teams. And then we're going to look for expert business and practitioner teams for specific strategies and initiate development. Strategy is coordinated, implementation is distributed because this plan is going to take a lot of effort from a lot of people. In terms of our next steps, it's the market analysis. We're going to share existing regional and local plans and studies and other relevant documents with our consultants. We're trying to share information on pending developments, public-private investments and deals in the region. Our economic development roundtable was our first step in doing that, and we plan to engage our partners differently. We're also going to facilitate access to quantitative and qualitative data sources. The assessor's office, department organizations with business, real estate, demographic, and other data. World Business Chicago is one of our primary sources. And then we'll also be doing some regional and local surveys. And then also, I did want to touch on it one more time, our next steps for our stakeholder engagement. We will develop a plan for stakeholder identification and engagement, and that's going to be a collaborative effort between not just Mark and myself, but John Grueling, our advisor, and the team from RW Ventures. We're looking to identify key people to be interviewed, such as informed experts, business leadership, economic development leaders, real estate development actors, local elected and government officials. We do plan to be reaching out to as many people, board members included, to get input on who they know from their local constituency to see what we can go and talk to them and try to bring them on board. And then we also have yet to determine our engagement model, just because we don't have the data yet on exactly who we want to work with or what is. There's so much information we're going to be compiling to learn. I've already learned in the last 3 months more than I have in the last couple of years of doing this work of just what's going on in the region, what's going on in the county, and the potential that we have for King County. And then I do have to, we clap for her, but Karen's great work for the National Water Trail designation. That's the kind of thing that when we can promote as something that the county is doing, we actually brings in different people who are interested in economic development. They have that in mind, oh, the river. And those are the type of people too we're looking for, is everyone who has different ideas. So with that, I know it's kind of quick, but I can leave it for questions and discussion.
So as a suggestion, as you are looking at tourism opportunities and the impact of the economy in Kane County, please do not forget about our golf courses, which are very important. We have lovely golf courses here. And then it was brought to my attention recently about the prowess of our equestrian activities, since we have such beautiful equestrian farms and what that means in the industry surrounding that.
And our forest preserves.
A forest preserve is a slam dunk. Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Berman.
Berman here. I'm really in favor of economic development for the county. We did have a committee back in the 80s, which I was on, the county, that it died because of lack of the funding, I think, more than anything else. One thing that we haven't, we won't succeed in, I guess, is eliminating the competition between the different communities on development of different things. So that's an ongoing situation, I guess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that we've always worked under the Mark and I's mantra is a rising tide raises all boats. And so we've always found ways to collaborate with our municipalities. And one of the goals of the Economic Development Organization will be the forum for everyone to work together and have opportunities shared on equal footing.
Sounds good.
I got lots of comments, yes.
Okay, Louis here. So first of all, I wanted to just say that when we did the Economic Development Roundtable, I guess it was last Friday, the level of participation, like I said, 27 people from up and down the river, and everybody was so enthusiastic about Kane County finally having an economic development group. And they are all, everybody was like, we will give you any data. They were like, we'll give you anything you want. We'll give you any help you want, because they see the need for this whole county, even though they've all got their own municipalities, things going on. But so the collaboration and the work that's already has been done, and the stuff that, and just the excitement it's generating right now is just so cool. And also I wanted to remind you also, we need to include our township people. They were here for a meeting last week, and I was talking to them, and they said, hey, we want in too, and I said, absolutely. We kind of forget about them sometimes.
Well, actually, I spoke with Blackberry Township today, so we're already starting on that. Thank you.
We all know we need economic development. I mean, that's like apple pie. We all want that.
Yeah.
And I hope that we are keeping sustainability in mind, and to preserve our own green spaces and the beauty and character of Kane County with minimal, always with keeping the environment in mind.
Absolutely. And that's the kind of feedback we're looking for as we move through this process, is to gauge where and what kind of priority list that would fit on it. But of course, sustainability will be on there.
Okay.
The real estate developers are very much in favor of what you just said, Ms. Bates.
I hope so, but sometimes I hear people say, we just love our green spaces. King County is so beautiful. And we just got to develop the heck out of this place. is the left hand listening to the right hand? You know, oops, like that. So I just want to make sure that we're always, we can't unbuild
Absolutely.
the built environment. So
Chris, thank you. Well done. Well done. There'll be more to this. And if I can make a suggestion next time we do this board, if we're going to be talking about strategic plan, I think that requires its own meeting because of the details and the in-depth questions. And I don't want to shortchange the other wonderful things that are happening up on the fourth floor.
Or bring more food, Madam Chairman.
We'll have dinner pretty soon.
Much.
Okay, thank you.
Chris.
All right.
Chris, thank you, Karen. Are you still here?
Considered a meeting. We don't have to ask for formal adjournment. I think everybody would like to probably go home and deal with the rest of your lives to repeat Mr. Kenyon. So have a good evening, everyone.